So our first question is to define the least restrictive environment and discuss this concept as it relates to models of delivery for special services. So least restrictive environment is talking about children who are service and special education and having them spend as much time as possible in the general education classroom or wherever their general education peers are. When it says environment, it makes people think that it's talking about a certain space, but it's not really talking about a space per se. It's talking about that education program that the child is a part of. And the least restrictive environment wants that special education student to be with their peers as much as they possibly can. Now, this is going to look different for each individual child because each individual child's program is going to be different and each individual child is different. So an LRE might be all day in the general ed classroom for some special education students. It might be being taking out during academic times to work in a resource room, or it might be spending all day in like a life skills program. So there is no one size fits all when it comes to talking about the least restrictive environment. It's mainly doing what is best for that child and making sure that they are not deprived of access to time with their peers in the general ed setting. Question number 2 talks about why is the assessment process described as a cycle and what are the components of the special education assessment process? So a cycle, like my image is, it just keeps repeating over and over and over again. So the goal of an assessment is to understanding what do you want the learning outcome to be at the end of an assessment period, and how are you going to measure and track that to find out if your intended learning outcome is being met. Those are for your regular assessments. The special education assessment process has 4 major components. So first, you're going to want to identify or refer that student. So you may be having some questions about or concerns about your student, and they may not be on grade level. And so you might refer them, you might have like a student success team or an academic team or a behavior team that you would fill out a referral form to and refer them. And then after that, they would go through a referral process where they would be assessed and then determine of eligibility would happen. And so once it's determined if the student is eligible for special education services, then they would be assigned a case manager, and then the case manager would plan a program, and then that program would be implemented. But the assessment process doesn't really start there, like they're in special ed, so that stops, but they're still going to be assessed. And that's, to me, why it's a cycle. It just keeps on going. So that IEP that's written by the case manager is going to have goals in it. And those goals are going to need to be monitored and assessed and tracked to make sure that the student is meeting the goal or is on track to meet the goal. And so those are all things that will have to be tracked and measured. So that assessment process, the assessment process never really stops. The special education assessment to determine whether they're eligible comes to an end, but then again, not necessarily, because they are continually tracked, and if they're meeting their goals consistently, then they might be taken out of special education services, or more services might need to be added and their goals might need to be changed. And then they have like triennial assessments to determine if the child still needs services or what is going on there. So that process is really a cycle that just keeps on going. Question number 3 says to describe at least 5 strategies a professional can use to encourage family participation in the special education assessment process, which I think is so important. So, number 1, communication, communication, communication. You want these parents to be informed. You want them to know what is happening in the process at all times. You want to make sure that they can reach you and that they want to reach you. So a way to do that is, what do you prefer? Do you prefer a text? Do you prefer a call? Do you prefer an email? Do you prefer social media, which I kind of like question, but Messenger is kind of safe in that area. I keep track with a lot of parents on Messenger, and they really like that. So, and you really want them to be receiving your communications and you want them to communicate back to you. So you want that preferred method of communication with them, especially in today's age. A lot of people don't like phone calls. They want an email or a text or a message or something like that. But they need to know that they can communicate with you at any time, and you need to know that you can reach them, and that communication pathway needs to be open. Trust is another really important thing. You need to build trust with families. They need to know that you are working in the best interest of their child and that you want what is best for your child, and you're going to add for their child, and you're going to advocate for that. And they want to trust that if you tell them something, it's the truth. Or if you don't know and you say, I'll find out, that you really will find out, and that you will return to them and give them the information. They also are going to want to trust the person who is assessing their student. Like, is that person trustworthy? Is that person a qualified professional that should be given these assessments? So there's all kinds of trust that needs to take place between education staff and families. Respect. I mean, you have to respect these families. You may not agree with everything that they're doing or their lifestyle, but that doesn't matter. You're there to educate and assess their child and to take care of their child, and they need to feel respected. They need to feel like their opinion matters and that you're not judging them. They need to feel like they're a key member of the team and that they are taken seriously as a part of their team. And also, if there are any cultural values or beliefs or differences, those need to be taken into consideration too and respected. Language differences need to be respected so that things are available in their native language. So these are all ways that you can show respect for parents. Equality is, parents need to be, again, an equal member on the team. They need to, nobody knows the student better than the parents. So they need to be an equal member of the team, and they're not educational professionals. So information is going to need to be presented to them maybe in a little bit of a different way, so that they can understand it. And that's understandable because they don't know all the acronyms and all the scales and all of that we would know. And they need to know that they can be their child's advocate, that they can speak up for their child in a meeting, and they can call with questions or concerns, and that they are important and that they are equal in this partnership. And commitment. Making sure that parents know the commitment of the school. The commitment of the school is to be part of the community. They're welcome at school. School is an open and welcome environment. Entrances are clearly marked, and waiting rooms are nice and comfortable, and they're greeted when they walk into the school, and they feel a sense of welcoming. There's an open door policy at school. School buildings are used for community events that the parents are invited to. This is all things that are really important to making a commitment with the parents and the community. This school is a part of their community, and they want to know that that you are committed to providing the best education for their child. Number 4, compare and contrast 3 types of derived scores: percentile ranks, standard ranks, and Straighties. Then tell how these scores are related to one another and to the normal distribution. So I'm going to be upfront. This is really hard for me. Any kind of statistical analysis is really hard for me. So explaining these is going to be a bit of a stretch for me. I know in special ed, I'm going to have to learn more and practice more, but here goes my best shot. Percentile ranks, this type of derived score is like a placement of a student compared to everyone else who took the test. So like you have a group of people who took a test and there's like a mean score, and this is where your student placed either higher or lower than that mean score. And then there's the standard score, and this is the score on a different assessment that may be using different scales. So you can compare a student score on one assessment to the score on another assessment that uses a different scale if you're using a standard score. And then Straineys, this type of derived score is divided into 9 segments, and a strain score represents a range of performance rather than a specific score. Like it's divided into 9 segments, and if you're between this and this, the 1 and whatever, this is what you are, and then if you're between 4 and 6, this is what you are, and if you're between 7 and 9, then this is what you are. So it's more of a performance placement than a specific score. So these are definitely related to each other. The percentile is something that you would see on like a norm reference test, like we do NWEA. And so we look at the placement of our student compared overall to other students who took that test. And a standard score, we might use that to compare a student that we're progress monitoring and the different scores that they're getting on different assessments. And then the strain score might be the performance of how they're doing on these standard scores, and with a standard score and a percentile score, where are they falling, in what range are they falling?